This is the third session that we've done on conflict management. The first session, as you remember 2 sessions ago, was getting ready to fight, establishing some good relationships before the actual conflict begins. Get the honeymoon over with before you start fighting. The second session dealt with as you're fighting, while the fight is going on. And in that we talked about some techniques that will help us to fight fair. In this present session, we're calling it After the Fight is Over, or building team spirit. It is important, you see, to build bridges after the fight is over. And only by building those bridges can we successfully keep the church intact. We can successfully live in harmony if we properly get ready to fight, fight fair, and then build bridges. I sometimes think that the most difficult thing for any of us to do is to mend relationships. Relationships once broken are very difficult to put back together. And that's our challenge. It is a difficult challenge, but it is not an impossible challenge. Jesus, you remember, said, I want you to love your enemies. That's a difficult challenge, but it's not an impossible challenge. In one of the earlier sessions, I talked about how that we act our way into feeling rather than feel our way into action. It is under this umbrella of agape love that we can look toward others in respect and acceptance and then begin to mend our relationships. If we've done a good job of conflict management, if we've gotten ready to fight appropriately and built some good relationships, and if we've fought fair in recognition of the fact that we are all brothers in Christ, then we will not reach the point of no return in our relationships. We will cause relationships to grow. We can build bridges and we can mend relationships. And sometimes we have to just get out of the way and let Jesus love our brothers through us.
We are one in the Spirit. We are one in the Lord. We are one in the Spirit. We are one in the Lord. And we pray that our unity may one day be restored. And they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are Christians.
After the fight is over, we must continually rebuild bridges. Relationships must grow. Our relationship with others, our fellowship must increase. We must develop what is called team spirit. I have always been impressed with teams that work so beautifully together. It might be a rowboat team, and they are rowing together and beautifully in harmony, and they are going toward a goal. They accomplish the goal. Or it might be a football team or a basketball team or whatever kind of sport team it might be. If they all work together as a team, I am impressed with that. Or it might even be 2 people in a political campaign. It may be one who has viciously opposed the other one, but somehow they came together in the party and got their party's nomination, and they united together and they went on to victory because they were united together. Or I am impressed with things like surgeon teams, open heart surgery teams, where they all work together just like clockwork, and they get the job done. They may not have a lot of relationships except in that operating room. They work as a team. Or perhaps a team of flying airplanes that are beautifully situated, and you just are amazed that they can fly in such perfect formation. Teamwork. That's important for the church. Now, we may not be a Vince Lombardi, or we may not be a Paul Bear Bryant, but there's a necessity for us to build teamwork. How do we get people from all different walks of life, rich men, poor men, beggar men, and probably a few thieves, put them together from all walks of life, all different attitudes and likes and dislikes, and harness them together as a team? Well, of course, the key is to build oneness of purpose, that our end goal is heaven. Our end goal is God. If we can all be situated together working toward one end, then we can be able to be successful. A church becomes a team when we constitute more than one. We bring separate individuals together, and then we become a team. In the second place, as we become a team, we must recognize that the language we use is a determining factor. We must learn to use we language, not they language. We are having a Bible school. We are having a meeting. We are going to help the poor. We're going to do this. Don't speak of the church where you worship as they're doing this, they're doing that. We must learn to be a part of this great church of which we are members. And if we can learn to be that, then we can develop a we sense of feeling. Then, as we own what is ours, as we recognize the church is Christ and we are part of it and we are very much a part of it, we then develop the concept that each person belongs. That's part of the team spirit. We can never have a team unless we recognize that we belong to the church. We belong to Christ. We are a part of it. That body language in 1 Corinthians 12 comes into existence. And then as we see where we belong in the church, then cohesiveness develops. We become glued together. You know, for this cause, Jesus says, shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. That word cleave means be glued. In the church, we need to be glued to each other. Cohesiveness begins to develop. So as we begin to work with people and try to get them molded into one group so that we can be a team, so that the many become one, then we need to develop a shared purpose, a shared goal. It is in developing this shared goal that we're able to really work as a team. You see, God's Son came to serve the Father. Peter says, I want you to follow Christ and I want you to please God. We should make it our will to be pleasing to God. That's our goal. That's our purpose. It is only as we are able to develop that goal that we're able to work together as a team. What kind of team would we be if we didn't know what the goals were? If we worked toward a wrong goal? I remember a number of years ago when I was in high school playing basketball. One day one of the substitutes came off the bench and hadn't quite got orientated yet, and the ball was shot. It bounced right in his hands. He put it back up. It went in the basket. He was so proud of himself. The only problem was he was on the wrong end. He made a goal for the opposing team. Now, what kind of team would we have if everybody is making their own goals? See, unless we have a central goal, a goal that's really unites us together, we can never develop Christian teamwork. When members climb on their own soapboxes and seek their own good, disharmony occurs. People in conflict usually just talk past each other until that central goal unites them. So if we're going to build team spirit, we must have a shared goal. Then, if we're going to have a team spirit, we must develop cooperation. Cooperation is necessary to attaining a goal. I must do my part, you must do yours. In order to do this, every member must be open-minded, not empty-minded, but open-minded. We must desire to do what's right. We must come from a standpoint that says, let's cooperate. The goal is more important, the long-range goal, the goal of God is more important than what I do individually or what you do individually or what you do as a group. It is in recognizing this possibility that we unite our beliefs together and move actively toward a shared goal. Each member must also be mutually supportive of one another. We cannot have a team unless we support each other. Sometimes in a football contest, for instance, a person will go out and say, well, look how great this running back is. And the running back will be interviewed on TV and he'll say, look, you have gained this 1,000 yards this year. Isn't that great? You're a great running back. And he'll say, I couldn't have done it without my line. In the church, that's the kind of team spirit that we must develop. I couldn't have done it without you. It was a great sermon, preacher, yes, but I couldn't have done it without the help that I've gotten from you. a great class, a great church does not happen all by one person. It's a team effort. So as we move from conflict, out of conflict, we rebuild bridges, and then we develop team spirit. It is only by developing team spirit that we can accomplish the goal of being with God eternally. When we reach the river of Jordan, if we do it successfully, it will be because we've cooperated and become a team for Christ. We've been talking about the necessity of rebuilding bridges to mend relationships, and how that if we do that, we're able to develop a team spirit. But at that point, we cannot leave the team by itself. It's a continuing process that we must go through if we're going to keep the team going. And what we're looking at, Tim, is the church. And there are some processes that we must continue if the church is going to continue to be a team. We cannot lay it aside and and expect it to be successful. So Tim and I are going to mention some things that will help us to continue the team spirit. First, I suggest that a sense of belonging and love. If we don't feel like we belong, and if we don't feel like we're loved in the local church, that team is not going to last very long. Gallup did a poll a few years ago, and one of the things that he found was that if you don't make good friends in the local church, 5 or 6, you won't stay. That's that sense of developing, that we need to develop, of belonging and love.
Another thing that contributes to team spirit, I believe, would be a sense of purpose and meaning. You talked about this, James, in your presentation before. Shared goals are important for a congregation, to have a common direction in mind. In Ephesians, Paul writes that we are to be in one spirit and of one purpose. Obviously, that's very important. Let me take off on that, though, and just mention also that having a real sense of meaning is important, too. One of the advantages we have in the church that helps us to be a team is that not only do we have a common purpose, but we all believe in that purpose. We all feel like that purpose is important and vital. That kind of investment in a purpose really builds team spirit.
That's certainly important. And another thing that we found that keeps this team going and the church going is that everybody gets to be involved in planning. A lot of times plans are made, formulated behind closed doors, brought to the congregation and thrown at them, and then expected that they will do what the plans are. But good planning involves the whole congregation. And if we're going to keep the team going, we must involve all the people in the planning.
But it's hard for people to be involved in planning if they don't know where we're going, what our goals are. It's important for every member of the congregation to be told what is expected of them so that they understand where this church is going and how they fit into that. Some research done recently has indicated that many people, when asked what are the specific goals of this congregation, really can't give an answer. And many of those who can give an answer don't identify those goals as being their own goals. Well, that gets to be kind of sticky. It's hard to have a team spirit when you can't move together in a direction because you don't know what that direction is. We need to know what's expected of us.
Definitely so. And then we should feel responsibility and a challenge. Some things that are done are just done for the sake of doing them. But if a church is going to work as a team, everybody must look at what he does as a responsible job and a challenge. We can't just give little things. We need to challenge the church. The church needs to be challenged with big things to do, and then we'll find the team spirit developing. Nothing
encourages a sense of oneness and excitement like progress. Nothing beats success. But I think sometimes perhaps we're a little hesitant to look at successes of the church, although it's so vital to do so if we're going to develop a real sense of camaraderie in the congregation. Sometimes we're a little hesitant to toot our own horns. But could I point out that we have some real good precedent in the New Testament? There are a number of times when people come back and tell the congregation what great things God has done through them. Peter and John did it after their appearance before the Sanhedrin in Acts 4. Paul did it after his missionary journeys. There was a reviewing of what God had done. And I think we need to do that more in the congregation to give a sense of movement and of progress.
Definitely. If we don't see what's happening and see some achievement, we don't feel good about it. We don't like to participate as a team. And that brings us really to another point that I think is very important, and that is an intense desire to be kept informed. Many times, people will do things, but nobody knows what they're doing. There needs to be a continual flow of information within the congregation. Sometimes this is done with church bulletins, sometimes it's done with announcements, but there needs to be this continual flow. If you're going to have a team, you've got to keep them well informed. And one of the mistakes that church leaders make so many times is not telling the church what's going on.
Some of the information that we need to be passing on to the members of the congregation constantly is who deserves to be credited for some things. We need to be giving each other some strokes in the congregation. Honoring each other is kind of the oil that keeps this team functioning smoothly. I know some congregations are a little hesitant to point out individuals or to thank individuals publicly because they're afraid they'll overlook somebody. But I think I'd rather be guilty of overlooking somebody than of failing to mention and reinforce some of the good activities that so many members do.
If the church is going to continue operating as a team, another thing that we've found is that each member must feel a sense of security. He must feel that he belongs there, that he has found his niche, so to speak. He feels comfortable. He must develop good relationships within that body in order that he feels comfortable. You know, my fingers feel comfortable in my hand because they're members of the body. God has knitted them together. And in the local body, the local team, the local church, God knits members within the body. And as He knits members within the body, they begin to feel comfortable there. And once they feel comfortable in their position, they feel secure. And they will work together as a team. All of these things are important in keeping the team going. As Tim and I have discussed these things, we must be aware again that if we're going to have unity in the local body, we must develop team spirit, we must build good relationships, and we must keep on working. Never stop building. Working for team because we're God's team. You see, my salvation and your salvation and the salvation of the world depends upon our working together.
We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord, we are one in the Spirit.